Hi, this is Dr. Lorenzo Neal. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Glad to be able to share with you on my channel, Zero Today channel on YouTube. And I want to take this moment to invite you, if you have not done so, to subscribe and also hit the bell for notifications when I upload future videos. Again, thank you for all your support. Information on supporting me and helping me grow this channel will be provided to you in the description. So let me get right into this. You got to excuse. I mean, it's annual conference time, and those of you who are Methodist or AME Zion, CME, you know the routine. It's annual conference, and I'm excited, anxious, all kinds of things. But so that has something to do with what I'm going to talk about a little bit. But I'm here in the space where I do my recording for my podcast, and I just wanted to do something real quick before I head out the door for a week full of meetings. It's been 400 years since the first Africans came to what we now recognize as these United States of America. 400 years in the colony of Virginia brought those first Africans to these shores. 400 years of lost identity and misdirection, or senseless direction, I guess you can say. 400 years of a long, this is a long time, but we are here, and we have become an indispensable part of the American identity, from the religious experience in America to the social experience of America, and especially the economic experience of America. We've been integrated into this system. Fix that. We've been integrated into the system unwillingly, unwillfully, but yet we have managed to make the most, I guess you could say. And that's not just for the African diaspora here in the States, but the African diaspora in South America, in the Caribbean, and Central America, and across the pond in Europe. You know, we've managed to gain for ourselves a sense of independence, even though it's almost been kind of like an interdependence almost, you know, because a number of factors. But anyway, these last 400 years, we have become an integral part of America's DNA, and I'm seeing this shift, you know, as we have diverged in experience over the last 400, especially over the last 200 years, since our liberation from slavery, and in more particularly in the last 40 to 50 years, where we've seen the civil rights movement at its height accomplish the goals that it sought, and in accomplishing it, we saw an acclamation of power, accumulation of power, prestige, wealth, but we also saw this deepening of the same, the deepening of the gap of the same. So while we were seeing academic strides post what's the term I'm looking for? After the Civil War, post Reconstruction. Thank you. As we saw the rise of our education post Reconstruction, we also saw the rise of our religious prowess and power and influence, with the likes of Richard Allen, founder of African Methodism, and William C. Moore, major influence in the Pentecostal movement. Charles Mason, C.H. Mason, also another major influence in the Pentecostal movement, and I could go on and on. about our influence in the religious sphere. Academically, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, and I could name a number of local and regional figures who contributed to how we grew academically, how we valued ourselves, how we saw ourselves academically, and productivity wise. I think I just made a word up. But either way, over these last 400 years, we have become a central element to the evolution of Western ideology, the evolution of particularly American prominence within the world front. We made a major contribution to that, and we should applaud ourselves for that. When we look at ourselves today, I sense a grieving that I can't articulate. It's a grief that's weighing, at least is weighing on me, from my perception of how we are developing culturally. And while we're developing culturally, I'm looking at the different attacks. For example, we now have persons of African descent, DOSs, ADOSs, American descendants of slaves, who have risen to positions that are just beyond us, who acquired wealth that was at one time unimaginable. And we are seeing what we're seeing because of the tenacity of our ancestors, who, for whatever reason or another, maintained their tenacity, their faith. And even if some was questioning the authenticity of those who were giving or supplying the faith to them, they took that faith and they developed this sense of tenacity and identity around the children of Israel with and the Exodus, and the sense of being delivered. And it reminds me of the scripture the psalmist writes, by the rivers of Babylon we sat down, and there we wept as we remembered Babylon. I mean as we remembered Zion. And our captors asked us to sing a song, and said, how can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? And I believe that we've been singing our songs in a strange land, and we've been trying to articulate who we are, identify who we are in various ways. There are those who are more Afrocentric than others. There are those who are a little bit more westernized than others. Either way, we found a way to acclimate ourselves over these last 400 years that have been valuable to us. I think a lot of this generation is missing on that. I was watching a live stream at my high school where and a fellow alumnus is now the principal there, and one of the most renowned pastors in my hometown, came and gave a history of our high school, being that it was a former colored high school, renamed and reaffirmed, still primarily African American all these years later. And the value of the school and its history has been not tapped into to help the school succeed. When I was growing up, we were learning of that value, the wealth of the history, and those persons who came from my school. Also with HBCUs, the same thing. I attended HBCU. I strongly encourage black kids to go to HBCUs. There's no experience like it. There is no experience like an HBCU. I don't care where you go. It's pretty much the same. Even at some of the most premier private schools, it's still going to be pretty much the same college experience across the board. You got to love it, from the enthusiasm and excitement of football games and the marching bands, to the stepping and showing off of the sororities and fraternities, of which I am a part of, and I got to do the stepping. And yeah, I love to go back to college. I don't want to have But I digress. The wealth of the black experience, or the ADOS experience over these last 400 years should be enough to propel us to see the greatness that is within us. And I think we're missing that a lot. But all we have to do is reform who we have been conditioned to believe that we are. And reform who we have been conditioned to believe who we are. We know our ancestors came over here, some willingly, some as Dr. Ben Carson stated, were immigrants. They did come by choice. But a vast majority did not come by choice. A vast majority came across that middle passage and were wishing death upon themselves, attempting death upon themselves, and bringing death on themselves because they did not want to go wherever they were being taken. And there's been a movement this year to return home. That's the going movement, and a lot of celebrities have been doing so, and not just celebrities, but a lot of persons have been going back to the continent of Africa, particularly the country of Ghana, and a lot of the countries on the west where most of the slaves, Africans, were taken into slavery. And they're going and they're finding that it is a different experience. It's a totally different experience. And I would encourage you to take the pilgrimage. It's not the Hajj, but it should be something every person, every descendant of slaves, if you believe yourself to be one, should make. And I do hope to return there eventually, soon, if not later. But we've made so much happen. We've made major contributions these last 400 years, and we need to begin to recognize that. Dr. Kress and her papers, her book, The ISIS Papers, is a wealthy resource. I say that at least 3 books every black person in America should have. The Soul of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, you should have that. You should have My Bondage and My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. That's one you should have. And you should certainly have The ISIS Papers by Dr. Kress, because those books provide a wealth of not just information, but a wealth of empowering words that can be used and weaponized for our advantage, economically, educationally, socially. We become too dependent on others, and it's a sad thing. We become too dependent on others when we have the means of doing it ourselves. As Harriet Tubman is attributed to saying, she could have freed 1,000 more slaves if they knew they were slaves. And I may not have said that right, but hey, y'all know it better than I. And I believe we're at the point now we could be far greater than we are now, academically, educationally, economically. You realize we have a GDP as a group, an ethnic group, just equitable to major European countries. That's a lot to say, and we can now say we have billionaires. We have billionaires, and other multimillionaires in the making. Of course, maybe they'll share, maybe they won't. but we have the ability to be great. We should be willing to be great. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice with our young generation by not giving them the tools of empowerment. They're full of rage, angst, illusion, disillusionment. they're wrestling to find their place, and in the midst, particularly with our young black men, in the midst of that rage and anger, they're committing acts of violence against themselves, and it's hurting our communities. And those acts of violence include not just gun violence, but think about the aggressiveness that they have. Think about all the pent up angst that led to, after a lot of the things, rioting, looting, all that stuff. We have the means of changing that. We have the means of affecting that. So I didn't want to talk too long about that. Listen, I want to invite you to join me in that. We're in the process of developing a rites of passage program for young black boys. Actually, a few years ago, about almost 20 years ago, I developed a mentoring program, and we're basically reframing that program and reorganizing it, targeting specifically young black men. I'd like to have you join me in this concept. If you want to know more, just hit me up, Pastor Lorenzo Neal at gmail.com. That's the email if you want to get more information. Better yet, ZME, info.zme at gmail.com. That email me if you want to get more information about what we're trying to do and how you can assist us in doing that. We want to be empowering to young black men, and I know that goes. There are a lot of programs targeting that. I believe that not only as a pastor that there's the spiritual component is essential, but also as a psychologist and as a therapist, I believe that psychological component is very essential, and we're using a family systems approach to this and helping them through our differentiation of self-training. Be your differentiated self. If you ever see me and I put that out there, we're working on that. And so from that perspective, a family systems approach and a differentiation of self approach, we believe that we can empower these young black men to be less emotional reactive and more empowered and liberated to do so. So hit me up if you would like to do that. Also, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Share your comments about whatever I talked about. More insight. If you have more insight, I'd love to do that. So you can put that in the comments, and we just appreciate it so much. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for all that you do that's helping us go forth. And you'll find information on how to support us also in the description. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'm off to annual conference. Blessings.